probably aware, I'm in tech support here at Gamble. So I talk to the people when they need a little guidance, something's not working right, and they'll call and talk to me or one of us guys in tech support. And Jaden, why don't you introduce yourself?
My name is Jaden Wiley. I'm in Gamble sales here at the home office. I was previously a member of tech support as well, so I had worked with Bobby and many others previously, helping customers make sure their machines were running efficiently and they were having the best experience possible. Now I get the chance to help make people's dreams of owning a Gamble come true and helping them upgrade their current system to meet their needs.
Very good. And just really quick, Cheryln, can you just give us a quick kind of introduce yourself and tell us what you do, how long you've been doing this, just for like a brief 30 seconds.
Okay, I live in Jefferson City, and I started on my Gamble in 2015. I actually started longarming 2013. Worked for a little company here locally and got some experience, and then decided I wanted to quilt for myself. So went with the Gamble Statler, and last year I upgraded to the end, and I've been in my business since 2015, and I do a lot of edge to edge and custom.
Very good.
Excellent. Well, we're glad to have you here with us, Cheryln, and we've got Haley that we're fixing to go to. Haley Fetters. We're going to begin with you, Haley, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And the course of this program, it's generally about a 1 hour program, and we generally spend about a half an hour with each one of you. And I just want to let you both know that while we're interviewing the other one, if you feel like you have something to add to what the other one is saying, just feel free. We're all family here, and you can feel free to jump in anytime. So we're going to start tonight with Haley Fetters. And Haley, where's home for you? Where are you located?
So I'm kind of in the middle of the country. I'm in Omaha, Nebraska. Okay. And I've been here forever. That's where I started. Yeah.
Now, how long have you been longarm quilting?
Oh my goodness. I apologize. Let me turn these notifications off. Sorry. I have been quilting for about 10 years. Almost 10 years, which feels a little crazy from where I started. And I knew even before I started quilting that I wanted to do this forever. I knew when I was 15 that I wanted to quilt forever.
When you were 15, what made you decide that you wanted to longarm forever?
So in high school, we were able to take a sewing class, and I started making clothes. I started, bags, things like that. And I absolutely hated it, but I loved the class and I absolutely adored my teacher. And she had suggested, well, maybe don't give up on it yet, start quilting. So I got my first quilt done, absolutely loved it, took it to the quilter, and immediately when I saw the machine, I was like, no, that's what I want to do.
Gotcha. So,
yeah.
And so was it shortly after that you went ahead and got a longarm, or?
No, it would have been, so I didn't get an opportunity. Well, I guess
15 after all.
Yeah, I was 15. So then for my senior project, I somehow managed to work quilting into it, and I got to shadow a quilter for a day. So that was my first hands-on with a machine, and it actually was a Gamble. And then right after I graduated high school, I had an opportunity to start working at it was a fabric and craft store. And I started as a cashier, and then shortly after I started as a cashier, they actually got a longarm of their own. And I said, I want to do that or I quit. So they put me back in the fabric department. I learned how to quilt, and they had a Gamble. And so that's what drew me to Gamble. I knew, like, as soon as I can get my own machine, that was what I was going to have. And it wasn't until, well, it would have been 3 years ago now that I got my own machine. So I worked there for 5 years. Then I sort of a really odd way of starting my own business. So I worked there for 5 years, and then I got my real estate license, and I did real estate for about 2 years. But while I was in real estate, I had a friend who also owned 2 gamels. So I would rent time on her machines on the weekend. And that's how I started my business. Was I took my clients from the old shop. I said, hey, I'm quilting on the weekends. Let me know if you need anything. Grew my client base working on the weekends, and then finally felt stable enough to buy my own machines 3 years ago.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
that quilt shop that you first started at, they had a gamel, right?
They did.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. So I have only ever worked on gamels.
So whenever you reached the point that you were ready to buy your own machine, you were already doing it as a business, but renting machines.
Correct.
So your intention of buying a Longarm was to use it as a business before you even owned one.
Yes. Yep. I always knew that was going to be what I did.
And what has that transformed into you now?
I mean, it's really cool. I get quilts from all over the country. I've actually had quilts from all over the world. So I do a lot of marketing, pretty much just exclusively on Instagram, but I still have my like home base clients who have been with me since the beginning, which is really cool. But getting to quilt for people all over the world is extremely special.
That's awesome. And yeah, I want to talk about that some more. But the machine that you have now, is it computerized or is it hand guided or?
I have 2 computerized stylers.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Quite impressive.
I got them, and I did get them used. I got them used as retrofits, but I knew I wanted the styler because that's what I started with.
Yeah. It was common sense to stick with what was familiar to you already.
Exactly. It would have made no sense at all to me to like try to relearn new technology.
And so the 2 machines, so you started with these 2 machines. Did you get them close to the same time period?
I got them at the exact same time. It was so funny because it was back when Gamel had dealers. And I remember I was talking to my friend who I was renting the machines from, and she started telling me about how our dealer had these 3 used machines coming in. And before she was finished talking, I was on the phone with the dealer. Hey, Cindy, it's 2 of those are sold. She's like, but they're not even available yet. I'm like, no, they're sold. Like, I'm going to take them. And my friend was just looking at me like, you're crazy. You're absolutely crazy. But she had 2, and I knew that with the business that I had, I would be okay.
Wow. So
yeah.
Since you had already worked at that previous shop, you had a group of people that were loyal to your quilting. So
Yes.
then whenever you transitioned into your own, you just absorbed those own customers, and then your opportunities expanded from there, correct?
Yes, I'm sure they wouldn't love me saying that, but yes. Yeah.
So, uh, so you got these machines, what, 3 years ago?
3 years ago. Yep.
Now I'm thinking you're young enough that I can ask you how old you are right now.
I'm 27.
So at that, so getting these machines at about the age of 24, how did you have the funds to do that? How did you do that?
So I'm still financing them. I have 2 more years before they're paid off. And it took about 2 weeks of begging and going back and forth with my business plan. And I mean, I really didn't have, like, I had the down payment, and that was all the money I had to my name, honestly. And so it was 2 weeks of begging and begging and begging of like, no, I'll pay you back, I promise. And they finally agreed at a ridiculous interest rate, but they agreed to give me the loan.
So you said that you were working real estate and then renting the machines on the weekends. So from the very second you bought your 2 machines, did you quit doing real estate and went to Longarm quilting full time?
I probably could have, but I had a 2-year obligation, which did not end until either April or May of the next year.
I see.
So I had to stay. But as soon as I could, I was about 6 weeks from my contract deadline, and I was really pretty done. And my boss was like, no, you have, like, I cannot do this without you. You have to stay.
So now you're out of real estate
Now I'm out of real estate
and
completely.
you're full-time doing the nothing but long arm quilting.
Correct.
Wow.
And I have since started, I also, one day I got really interested in learning like how the actual quilting patterns were made for the machine. And there was a pattern that I could just envision in my mind, but like I couldn't find it anywhere. So on a whim one day I bought the technology and the software to be able to design my own quilting patterns. So I do that as well now.
You're an overachiever, you know that.
I've been told.
So,
I do have a
roughly-
question for you, Haley.
oh, go
Do
ahead.
you sell your patterns?
I do. I sell them on Etsy, and then I actually have probably not all of them, but majority of them up on the Pattern Cloud as well.
I
Very-
was wondering because when I looked into doing that, they said I needed a patent attorney and getting patents and all those kinds of things. So I was just wondering how that worked for you.
Yeah, no, I just from everything, and I learned I was all completely self-taught because when I went asking questions, no one really knew how to answer my questions. So I just kind of figured it out. So whether I'm doing it right or not, I don't know, but I'm doing it.
And I think anybody that's watching or listening to this podcast, you can get a lot of that type of information, you know, like where to go through, I guess it would be through our education people.
Yeah, or through our Accelerate program that we just released last week.
That's right.
Yeah, the Accelerate program is intended for people that are going to use the machine for business, and that includes, you know, pattern design and all of the ways you need to go around handling the business logistics of operating a long arm business and everything it entails.
Say the name of that again, just so the people can write it down.
That is the Accelerate program. You can find that on our website by going to gamel.com/accelerate. Now, back to you, Haley, since you do this full time, about how many hours a week do you spend quilting for customers or doing the pattern design related work?
I would say now I probably average about 30 hours a week. But it used to be a lot more. But certainly now I've tried to find more of a work-life balance. So maybe 30 to 40 a week.
Good. And I like the way you said that, a work-life balance. I wanted to ask you, so do you do only edge to edge? Do you do any custom?
When I was really starting to like get good at custom, which was just recently, I've had back issues for a long time, but when I really started to like find my groove in custom quilting, my back just said no more. So unfortunately, just edge to edge, no custom.
Wow.
But I wish I could, because I really did love it.
One thing that we get asked by people all the time is, how do you charge for your service? And of course, so many people, this question varies, but you, in your case, particularly, Haley, how do you charge? Do you have a minimum? Do you charge per bobbin? Just explain that for us, please.
So I do have a minimum. It's $50 a quilt. But then I do charge per square inch, which is pretty standard. So for me, I charge, I have two price points, either 2.2 cents per square inch or 2.5 for more heavy quilting. And I will let people, like if they have a bunch of small quilts that they want to quilt, instead of doing, you know, each one individually, if they put it on one back, then I'll charge per inch versus the $50 per little quilt.
Sure.
And do you sell other supplies like batting, fabric, or anything like that?
I do have batting, but I don't supply like wide backs or anything like that. So just the batting, and I carry 3 different kinds. And I guess I'll order wool if somebody really wants wool.
Sure. So with your price structure, what would you say you charge for the average queen size quilt edge to edge?
Well, you know, I was not prepared, but I can tell you real quick. So let's call it
You get down to the nitty gritty here.
990. About 160 for the quilting, add maybe another 40 for batting. So about 200 total if you're doing batting and the whole thing.
Very good. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So you've been doing this hardcore for about 3 years. Is that what?
About 3 years. Yep.
Okay. So what would you say, how many quilts on average are you doing per year? And have you had a big difference between, so did you start like in the middle of COVID maybe?
Yeah, so it would have been December of 2020. So right, like in the middle of COVID. Yeah.
Well, how would you compare your quilt numbers, when you started versus now? What?
Ooh, good question. I want to say from last year to this year, we're probably about 100 quilt difference. So maybe 500 this year, around 400 last year. But I don't know that there was like a huge jump between the previous year for those first two. What I've seen, because I typically I kind of have an amount that I can I'll do quilting for the week and then I'm pretty much done. So I would say the average number of quilts is like pretty consistent.
Sure.
And that obviously varies for how small, how big they are too. But what I've really noticed is the quilting patterns that I designed. That, I mean, you look at my first year to now, and that was 2 years ago. Huge difference. Huge difference.
Well, and one thing that I think people are not aware of, it's not at the forefront of their mind when they're buying a Longarm or buying a computerized machine with software, but it opens you up to a creative studio, which is also an amazing pattern designing program.
Yep.
You can utilize the same machine that you're doing your quilting with to design patterns and open up even another revenue stream for you and your business.
Yes, and that's all passive income too. So once it's out there, it's out there and you can sell it and sell it and sell it, and you don't even have to work at that point to. So that's been really nice for me to be able, especially with that work-life balance too. That's a huge contributor.
With your quilting in your shop, do you offer any other services like binding or piecing?
I will do backing, piecing. I'll do pattern matching of backs. I will do machine binding. I do not do hand binding any longer. It takes so much time.
Sure.
But I do machine binding. Yep. And I charge, what is it, 35 cents per inch on that.
Well, so in the few years that you've been doing this, if you had to come up with the most difficult part of it, what would you say was like the hardest part of getting your business going or starting this out?
For me, probably the financial part, because I knew I had the business, but when you're taking out a loan that's a mortgage payment, that's scary, especially when you're 24. And I've always made my payments on time, but there were definitely months where food, say, was not always the priority. So I would say like that was the hardest part for me. But you figure it out. The best, so I know this is on your list of questions, and I'm going to jump to it really quick because it's something that I was told in one of my real estate meetings that really, I think that was the moment for me in real estate, when it clicked that real estate was A, not what I was going to do, and B, the switch flip, okay, quilting, I'm going all in, I'm doing it. My broker said to this big group of people, he looked around and he said, "You got to burn your boats." We're just looking at each other like, the heck does that mean? Burn your boats. And we all had this really confused look on our face. And he goes, "Gotta burn your boats. If you always have a plan B, your plan A will always fail. So you just got to burn all your backup plans. There is no backup plan. You go with plan A And that's it, because if you give everything you have to your plan A, you cannot fail. And something about that really hit me. And so I said, okay, like, that's it. I'm doing it. And I never looked back. It was the best piece of advice I've ever gotten.
Was that the real estate guy that was telling you that?
Yep. Yeah.
I don't think he was talking about the same boat you were thinking about.
No. That's okay. I don't think I made him that much money anyway.
Now, Haley, who was your biggest cheerleader, your main support system in starting this journey?
Honestly, this is gonna sound a little conceited, but I think because I was so young, nobody really thought I would go on to do it. And my parents were never the pushy college type, but they never really thought that this would be a career for me. And my boyfriend always kind of thought I was crazy, and everyone's like, oh yeah, quilting. Okay. So I would say my biggest cheerleader was me. I just always had this, I don't know, bullheadedness of like, I don't care what everyone else is doing. I'm going to do it. And I just knew in my heart that this is what I needed to do, and I was going to make it work. So I had a lot of people telling me, oh, this is a terrible idea. And I just kind of didn't listen.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that, and that's a meaningful and poignant thing to say. We always ask people that, and they always come up with somebody who is encouraging in their life. But what you're talking about, I think, is a key thing for probably everyone watching this or listening to this podcast, that you need to be a cheerleader for yourself.
If you don't believe in yourself, or you let other people get inside your head, I mean, that is going to be your biggest detriment, I think.
Well,
personally.
and Haley, being that you're someone that believed in yourself and you made it happen, how does it feel now? What kind of impact has it brought to your life? The flexibility in your schedule, the money that doing this for a full-time job has provided for you. What impact has that had on you, knowing that what you believed in yourself to do was a massive success?
Knowing that I believed in myself so strongly, I think for me, it means just that I can do anything I set my mind to. And that just sounds like the cheesiest thing in the world, but it is. It's so true. If you prove to yourself and then to everybody else that you can do something that they told you maybe you couldn't do or that you wouldn't do, it's the biggest motivator. And then I can honestly say I will never go back to working for anybody else ever again.
Wow. Well, Haley, a lot of the people listening to you right now, they may not have the confidence that you have. And I know for a fact, a lot of the people listening to this right now are just kind of maybe wringing their hands, wondering if this is something that they need to take a leap and do, or what is their next step if they're already into it. What kind of advice would you have for somebody who is either thinking about going into business with a gamble or is already in it? Just off the top of your head, what would you tell them?
I would say to like everyone, especially the people who haven't taken the leap yet. I spent years and years and years doing like research. Do your research, but then you'll get to a point where you have all of the information that you could ever want or need. And there's going to be a moment, and for me, it was the burn your boats moment, but like something's just going to click. There's going to be a little voice. Listen to the voice. Like there are going to be so many other people and voices saying, don't do it. But if the voice in your head is saying like, this is the moment, listen to that voice. Trust your gut. Again, cheesy, but like there were so many moments when, everyone was telling me this is a terrible idea, and my gut was telling me, no, this is the moment. And I listened to my gut, and I'm where I am today because of it. And my husband, it drives him crazy because he doesn't get it. And I don't know. He's like, I don't understand. It seems crazy. And so we have fights about this sometimes. I'm like, no, you just go to your gut. Like, this is what we're supposed to do. Just trust me.
It is a hard thing for people outside of our industry to understand how real the quilting world is and the power and the money behind it.
Yeah.
Now, Haley, thank you so much for answering our questions. You've been great. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your inspiration. Please feel free if while we're talking to Cheryln, if there are any other comments or things that you think about after what we have discussed to this point, I welcome you to speak up. As Cheryln may want you to ask her a question in the same regard that you asked her one. You may inspire a stroke of genius in her.
And before we move on from you, we did have one person that's listening. Douglas was asking, what software does Haley use to manage handling 500 quilts per year?
Actually just Excel. I love my spreadsheets. They probably have about 6 I use consistently. So nothing fancy, just my Excel spreadsheets, and they're all like rainbow color coded, and you have to find a system that works for you, whether it be QuickBooks or PayPal but for me, it's Excel spreadsheets.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me.
Thank you very much. You hang with us, and you feel free to jump in while we're talking to Cheryln. And now we're going to move over to Cheryln. Cheryln, thank you for your patience and being with us. And we are so glad to have you with us. Cheryln is a fellow Missourian.
Yep.
Can you tell us exactly where home is for you, Cheryln?
I live in Jefferson City, but I'm glad to hear that Haley was from Nebraska because I'm a Nebraska girl. Went to the University of Nebraska at Lincoln for college, and I
Go
love
Missouri!
Omaha. So,
Small world.
but I've lived in Jefferson City for about 27 years now.
Very good. Now, Cheryln, you said earlier that you got your first gamel in 2015, and that last year you added the Ascenda upgrade to your Statler. So what made you decide to Longarm in 2015? Or you said you had been quilting prior to that. So what made you to decide to start Longarm quilting in general?
Well, I've always been a piecer, and I have a really good friend who is a long armer. She had a gamel, and I just admired her work, and I wanted to do what she was doing, but I was teaching. And so when I retired from teaching, I guess I retired early 2012 or 2013 of that year. And my husband gave me a workshop at a local quilt shop. You could go and learn how to run their long arm. They had a Tin Lizzie, and I worked on the Tin Lizzie for a couple of years until I just and I did some work with my friend on her gamel. She decided to retire from her business, and she really encouraged me to start my own business. And when I was researching the machines, there was no doubt in my mind that gamel was what I wanted to get because it seemed like it was the top of the line. It seemed like it had the best support system. I loved their computer program. And so one defining moment for me was when my mentor said, invest in yourself. And so I just decided to go ahead on that was my aha moment, I guess. And I decided to buy my own machine, and it's in my basement, and I just have the one machine in my studio. So I do my work at the house.
Now, before we go too far, I was curious, what did you teach before you got into this?
I taught business and computers
Wow.
at a local high school.
Wow. So, and when you got your first gamel, was it specifically to go into business, or was it just was there a personal pleasure in it also, or what about that?
I did want to quilt my own quilts. because as we all know, experiences with different quilters is interesting, but it was to make money too. I wanted to start my own, start my long arm business, and my mentor recommended me to some of her clients. And so I started really slowly with some family and friends who needed quilts done, and it kind of blossomed from there.
You said that you had a mentor that had a gamble already. Were they busy enough with their machine that you had justified already there was enough business locally to support yourself?
Oh, absolutely. She had a hand-guided, and I knew that I wanted to get the computerized because I'm a little bit older than 27, and I knew that I wanted to kind of save my back a little bit and use that part to make it just easier for me. And she really helped me a lot with how to run my business, so to speak. Not really the quilting part, but just giving me advice on how to handle clients and how to deal with all kinds of problems you have with the business.
So when you first started, how did you start like building a customer base? I mean, did you like start out with some people already? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I started out, like I said before, quilting some quilts for my mentor, quilting for my family. My mom and my mother-in-law are piecers, and so I quilted for them. I belonged to our local guild, and got a few recommendations from my mentor, got some of my work out there that people saw, they started to like, and I just started growing from word of mouth. I've never really advertised. I do have a Facebook page, but I have business cards that I put out at local shops, so that most of the local shops just do edge to edge, and so I do custom as well. It's nice that they can recommend me, seen my work, and they like it, so they give out my business cards.
So you would say you've pretty much been exclusively word of mouth?
Yes, that's all I've
And
ever had. Somebody recommends me or sees something I've done, and so give them my name.
and I've heard that from a lot of different quilters. That's something we didn't touch on much with Haley. Haley, what about you? Do you do advertising or?
I do. So I started when I was at the local quilt shop, pretty much was all word of mouth. And then still lots of word of mouth since I left, but I do a little bit of TikTok, a lot of Instagram, and I will go to local shows, and sometimes I'll go outside of Nebraska and do shows to advertise as well.
Well, Haley, go ahead and feel free to tell the audience and the people listening your Instagram handle and places they can find your work and support you.
Thank you. So my business is Mistletoe Quilting Co, and just comes from my love of Christmas. All of my social media, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram is under Mistletoe Quilting Co.
Very good. Thank you.
Mistletoe
Now,
Quilting Co.
Cheryln, same with you. Where can people find your Facebook page?
The name of my business is Ladybug Quilting.
Okay.
And there's one in Texas, I think, also, but I'm the one in Missouri.
You're the Missouri
Hopefully.
Ladybug Quilting.
That's right.
You got the
When
monopoly on that name in Missouri.
When I chose my name, the best advice I got was from my mentor. She said, don't choose something like grounds quilting or something that was kind of stodgy. She said, choose something that's catchy, that people are going to remember, like Mistletoe Quilting. That's really a cute name. And there's a lot of quilting bees out there, and I've always loved ladybugs, so I kind of went with that. And it's interesting, people ask me, how'd you pick your name? And I said, I picked something fun that I liked.
That's all it takes, and we know.
And we want to, what we do want to move on to another question, but I did want to tell the people that are listening right now, you can, if you're tuned in on your computer, you can click on there on that little chat window, and you can ask live questions as we're doing this. I kind of failed to mention that at the beginning. But now moving on, we talked a little bit about your how do you find customers to grow your business. How did you fund your first when you first bought a gamel?
Well, I tried to get a loan. I talked to people in Springfield. Marilee We Quilt Along was the dealer at that time, and she recommended a couple of banks, and I talked to them, and I don't think the bankers had any clue what kind of a business I could provide.
What
And
machine?
pardon me?
They said, "Oh, what machine?"
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of like my husband. He supported me 100%. He knew I could do it, but he said, I just don't know if there's enough business to support, enough quilters out there to support a business. Which he quickly found was not true. There are a lot of people out there looking for good quilters. So I actually just took money out that I had saved for investments and retirements, and I pay cash.
Very good. Now, since you were already retired before you got your machine, and then you paid for your machine cash, whenever you got your first Statler and you were began quilting for your family, your friends, and the few people that came along, how many hours a week are you quilting at this point on your machine?
Now I would say I'm quilting at least 40 hours a week. I have beautiful grandchildren, of course, and they're very active in sports. And that's important to me to go to their activities, to go to family things. I'm very active in a lot of different things. So I quilt in between those times. I would say on an average, I quilt 7 or 8 hours a day, but I do that 7 days a week. Day. My husband also works from home. So we just are down here together, and he's working on his thing and I'm quilting. I've also taught him how to help me load the quilts, which is really great because some of these big quilts that you get in are really hard to manhandle by yourself.
Absolutely.
So yeah, he helps me load, and he's learned what a fat quarter is, so that's really impressive. But I do spend a lot of, when I'm home, I spend a lot of time on my machine. If I get up at 7 o'clock, I come down in my pajamas, so it's real nice.
And so you find you're able to kind of break up, if you have something you want to do, grandchildren or whatnot, you can spend your quilting time at the time of day that you want to.
Absolutely. Haley's absolutely right. It's the balance of work and life. I wanted to do this in my home because I didn't want to have to be committed to, my job or going into the quilting machine shop at a certain time. So I a lot of times will quilt, and my average shutdown time at night is 9 o'clock at night. So I'll come home instead of watching TV. I do have a big TV in here. We'll watch, things on TV, but I'll be quilting. And if I feel like taking a nap in the afternoon, go ahead and, I have found, especially with custom, that when I get mentally tired or physically tired, I have to stop. And that's just, makes sense. And then when I'm refreshed, I can come back down at any time and quilt when I want to.
Now, one question that we didn't ask Haley would be a great question for both of you. given you both quilt about 30 to 40 hours a week, what is your average turnaround time on a quilt, and how long at any given time can your workload be backed out?
Oh, I can go. I try to stay a month or less, especially having the two machines. I'd say 6 weeks is really the longest I try to be
Sure.
backed out, except during Christmas time. I mean, Christmas time is obviously hard. So I'll start giving warnings in like September. Hey, if you're gonna have something for Christmas, let me know. And then my cutoff, I have a pretty late cutoff because I'll work as long as I have to in November, December to get Christmas quilts done. So my cutoff is November 19th for guaranteed delivery for Christmas.
Very good. Now, Cheryln, what does that look like for you?
Mine is different because I do custom, which takes 2 to 3 times longer depending on the tightness. If someone wants a quilt that's heritage quilted, what I call a heritage, which is very tightly quilted, that's going to take 3 times longer than an edge to edge. So I give a general 4 to 6 weeks. That's my general turnaround time, depending on, and I will talk to someone if they want it faster, or if they have a deadline when they call me. I have a wait list that I put their name on. So I know I have 2 quilts that I have to get done by the end of November. And that way I can manage my time and my quilts. Now, my cutoff time for Christmas is a little bit sooner. It's usually the first week of November, just because I do the custom and I have to really manage the time on the machine that I have. And I would say that the reason my turnaround time is because of the custom.
Sure.
Usually, sometimes I have a person on a wait list and I'll say, okay, I need it by the 1st of October. They'll bring it to me that day and I'll do it that day because their name has been on the list. I do have rush orders that I do sometimes, but I usually charge extra for that. If someone calls and says, hey, I need this quilt in a week, and I don't feel it's fair to people who have been waiting, so I do charge an extra fee for that. But I would say because of that, 4 to 6 weeks. And it has longer. When I had my hip surgery a couple of years ago, it took me a lot longer to get my quilt done. But I tell my customers that ahead of time. And I think communication is the big thing there.
And do you do primarily custom, or do you do both edge to edge?
I do both. I have
what is your ratio?
really, pardon me?
What would you say your ratio is?
Well, I would say right now it's about 60% custom and 40% edge to edge. I have some customers that have been with me a long time and they only want edge to edge. That's all they want. And then I have some really good customers who all they want is custom. It's harder and harder to find people who will do custom quilting. So if someone's interested in doing custom quilting, I would really encourage them, because that is a market that is kind of opening up. People are finding that there are a lot of quilters out there, but because of the time, I mean, you can get a lot more quilts done edge to edge than you can on getting custom. So because of the time it takes to do custom, people are not quilting in that area.
Now, when you do custom, do you do it primarily like hand-guided free motion, or do you use your computer to do majority?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do both. It just depends on the design of the quilt. I don't know if you can see this one behind me, but all of this is free motion. But then these little things here are a design I plugged into that area. So I like to do both depending on what the quilt depicts. So, and I create a lot of my own designs. I just don't sell them.
Yeah, would encourage you to do that.
You want to ask that chat question?
I may have to talk to you personally, Haley, to find out how you do it on Etsy.
not only are we connecting viewers and listeners with you guys, I guess we might be connecting the two of you together. So,
There we go. She's a Nebraska girl.
Yeah,
um,
go Huskers.
Cheryln, I also wanted to ask you, we had a listener question about do you use a software to manage your business, and what is that for you?
Excel. I taught business and I taught Excel, and I'm very, very familiar with that. Although we do have QuickBooks, some of those other things. Um, I don't take credit cards. I only take cash or check. And I have Excel spreadsheets that I'm use every day to manage my business. And I have batting that I sell. I used to have wool batting, and then the price of wool got to be very, very high. So I will quilt on that, but I don't have that in stock at hand. I only have the one type of batting, 80/20, and I buy it by the roll, so I have plenty to sell to my customers.
Very good. Now, how have you structured your rates for your business? I know you mentioned earlier that you do about 60% edge to edge and 40% custom. We know that those prices greatly differ. So explain that a bit for the customers.
Yeah, actually, it's the other way around, about 60% custom. I'm sorry if I misspoke.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think as Haley can attest, she has two different prices for edge to edge. It depends on the density of the quilting and of the pattern. If there's a lot of stitching, it takes a lot of thread. The square inch price goes up. With custom, it depends on if I have to design my own pattern. I have 3 levels. I have a base custom, and then a second level, and then I have a heritage, or what I call an heirloom level. I have one lady who wants every square inch quilted to the last breath in its body. And that just takes a lot more time to do, which I love to do. I love that creative outlet, but it's based on the amount of quilting per square inch. But it twice or almost 3 times as much to custom. And I tell people up front that it's beautiful work, but it takes a lot more time.
And what would you say is an average price for a custom quilt versus an edge to edge for you? Average.
Well, yeah, an average price of custom quilt queen is going to be $280 to $300, depending on the density of it.
Mhm.
So that's almost double what an edge to edge would be, which is about right. 3.5 to 4 cents a square inch is where we start at custom, and different areas charge different things. It's kind of the market price. I talked to a lady in New York, and they charged 10 cents for custom, 10 cents a square inch for custom. And she said, "Why would you charge less?" And I said, "Well, I would love to get 10 cents a square inch, but no one around here would pay that."
And
So,
that's
you have to understand your market in a local area. And I did a lot of research. I talked to, local quilters and say, "What do you charge?" And then I have to find my own balance.
Yeah, the cost of living in Missouri is a lot different than what it is in New York.
That is very true.
so given that you have a healthy mix of both types of quilting that can be quick and that can be long, about how many quilts do you complete on average in a year?
Well, I looked that up because it was on the questionnaire. My best year, I did 145 quilts in a year, which is a combination of the custom and edge to edge.
Sure.
And when I first started, of course, I didn't do near that many because I didn't have near as many clients. And I think COVID, although I wasn't down much, a lot of people stayed home and pieced their quilts. I had a little bit less, but it's coming back up again. So
That is enlightening and a good thing for everyone.
yes, I don't think people understand that there is a market for quilters out there. It's quiet, you don't hear about it. Um, go to your local guilds, go to your quilt societies or organizations, and there are a lot of people looking for good quilters. There are quilters out there who maybe don't quilt the way you want them to. We have a lady in town who quilts very quickly, but she quilts very densely with a large stitch. And that's okay for people who like that kind of thing. My advice is just find someone who quilts the way that you like and stay with them, or you know
Yeah,
get a good relationship with your quilter and tell them what you want, and the more you go back to the quilter, the more they'll be able to understand your likes and your needs.
yeah, and you've mentioned, I think you mentioned like 5 times during this interview, quilters. One of your first statements was how different quilters can be interesting, and I sense the quotation marks around that word interesting, you know. So, and a lot of the people that are listening to this or watching this right now, are going to be quilters. Um, what would you have to say about just about that part of it, about what kind of quilter a person should be, or you got any words of wisdom about that?
I would tell someone who's going into business for themselves, be yourself. Quilt what you feel comfortable doing, what you like. There is a certain amount of seeing what your customer wants and quilting that. But just be yourself. Um, Believe in what you can do. There are certain things that I don't like to quilt, like patterns that I don't think go with what's on the quilt, but I will do it anyway. And look at what you think is beautiful. Look at different quilts. If you think the stitching is too open, then quilt a little bit closer together. Look at the length of the stitch per inch. Look at the quilt color of the color of the and the color of the thread, and just do what you think appeals to you and your client.
That is
You
that is
can't be someone else.
Well, we know that maintaining your individuality, playing to your strengths is the most important
Yes,
thing, because we're all different, and there are people that just want to do edge to edge. Some people just want to do custom or semi-custom, and without all of you, one person would be busy and the other person would not be busy enough, and there would be
right.
an imbalance.
And one message I'm hearing kind of beneath the surface is that it sounds like maybe you can actually combine what you enjoy with actually building your business.
I was gonna add to that. I think that you quilt what you like, but so what you put out there, you attract. So when I started my own business, I have my clients that are, have been clients forever, but they're very set in their ways. They like what they like, and that's okay. And it's not my style. So when I started my own business, I really got to put out there what I thought was beautiful and what I really liked, which was more dense quilting, really wild thread colors, more modern, obviously. And I started to attract those clients. So I get to quilt those quilts a lot more now.
And
Well said.
that allows you to kind of maintain your specialty, and that's also making your customers happy because they're getting their quilt done by someone who has the same style and preferences that they do, which is important. And it's the same way with Cheryln's customers. Now here we have
Let me qualify.
we
Let me
have
qualify what I mean by interesting.
sure.
Some quilters do the same thing over and over and over without actually looking at what would be best on the quilt. And I think that is an area that people can broaden, their views a little bit.
Mhm.
And I don't mean that it's necessarily bad. There is not one right or wrong way to quilt a quilt. It's just what would be maybe better than another.
Sure. We've received 2 questions here from viewers. The first question is, on average, what size quilt do you quilt the most? Cheryln, you start with an answer for that.
I would say the trend is going to smaller quilts. I see less and less king size, um, less and less huge queens,
Mhm.
um, throws a little bigger than throw. I do see a lot of wall hangings, but I would say anywhere between 60 to 85 inches wide by, 72. The trend is, from what I am seeing, people don't like to make those huge quilts anymore.
Nope,
So
I
I'm seeing, go
yeah,
ahead.
I was just gonna say large throws to like maybe twin size is what I probably see the most.
Very interesting. That's not necessarily what I would have guessed. I hear people talk about queen size frequently. So do you think that people are moving to smaller quilts like that because uh, people just don't want to take the time to piece those larger and larger quilts anymore? Are we growing impatient in that regard?
Well, I don't know if it's patient, but cost is a huge factor.
Sure.
To make a bigger quilt, it's expensive to get the fabric and the time you put into it and then getting it quilted with the back and the batting. So I think people like the fact that they can make a smaller quilt and use it and they don't have so much invested. I also think storage is another thing. If you have 5 king size quilts, it's it's takes up a lot of room if you don't have that many beds.
Sure.
I think people also do like to get their project done. So they like to have a smaller project so they can go on to the next one. So
I
I
al-
think it's a combination.
I
Go ahead,
also
you're fine.
um that with all the amazing fabrics that are just constantly coming out, at least for me, I'm always like, I always have FOMO. Like, I want to sew with all of these fabrics, but I don't want to have 35 projects done. So I'll make something smaller so that I can sew with more fabrics.
Well, those are all very valid points and interesting perspectives in regards to that. We've gotten 2 more questions for you guys from listeners.
You're piquing a lot of interest.
Yeah, this next one asked, do either of you add a thread charge to your quilting?
I do not. No.
Yeah, I have not in the past. I know that people charge like $1 a bobbin that they use. I I haven't yet. I don't know about Haley, but the price of thread has almost doubled since I started quilting, and I have adjusted my price kind of accordingly since I started 10 years ago. But with COVID, the prices of things have just skyrocketed, as everybody knows. I haven't started charging for thread yet because it reflects in the quilt if it's being quilted tightly or quilted loosely. So I do not.
So you both prefer more of an all-inclusive pricing
Right.
in adjusting it opposed to adding on the extra charges.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And lastly, it says, can Haley and Cheryln go into more detail on how they utilize their Excel spreadsheets and what they track and cover with their quilting business?
Oh, geez. Oh, yes. How much time do we have?
Let's make it a quick answer.
I track everything. I track, like names, size of quilt, cost of quilting, what I make monthly, how it compares to like years previously, how many quilts I'm doing a year, how many new clients I'm getting every month, taxes, money coming in, money going out. anything that I can track in a spreadsheet, I probably have a spreadsheet for.
Yours is a bit OCD, okay.
Yeah.
Mine is similar for tax purposes. I mean, you have to, in Missouri, you have to track sales, keep track of sales tax on anything you sell. And so batting, I have to keep track of that. I keep track of the number of times a client comes back to me. So I have a column that is a repeat of clients, as well as the date they come in and the date they leave. So I'm tracking my turnaround time. I track if it was custom or edge to edge and customer's name. I also have one that has access of my clients. So if I need to get a hold of them for some reason, I have a spreadsheet on when the quilt comes in, as a brief description of the quilt and who it belongs to. In case I die, my husband can get the quilt back to the person it belongs to. So anything you can think of, you can keep a record of in Excel. And Excel is very inexpensive to have, and you can just keep running totals and individual totals.
Well,
Hope that answered the question.
yeah,
Well,
that's very good detail, and we appreciate. It sounds like you can basically do as much or as little as you want with that. Our
Yes.
time is we're a little bit over time, which is okay. But I wanted to ask you, Cheryln, one question. Who would you say was your biggest cheerleader in doing your business?
Well, my mentor, Eva Studley here in town, she's a fabulous quilter. She's the one who recognized my potential and really encouraged me to do it. Of course, my mom was my cheerleader a lot. My husband believed in me, but like I said, he didn't realize the quantity of quilts that were out there. And I guess, like Haley, I was stubborn. This is something I wanted to do, so I decided that I was going to go ahead and do it and prove everybody wrong that
So
I could be successful.
have you found that so it sounds like your husband kind of started out with, I don't know about that quilt stuff, but as time has gone on, it sounds like do you find that he's fallen in line a little bit more?
Yes, he really supported me. He's seen my piecing on my quilts and things that I have made, and so he did that part about it. He was unsure of how I could support a business, because you only make like maybe one quilt a year or two quilts, in a couple of years. And I told him that may be true for me, but you get a whole bunch of customers. You get a customer base that come regularly to you, and like Haley, she probably gets things mailed to her from all over the world. I'm assuming, Haley, since you said you had out of the country business. So you just get a revolving client base. And he figured that out now. He has no doubts now.
and now he's loading quilts for you.
That's right. I have him busy all the time.
So you touched on this.
I've even threatened to get a second machine to teach him how to do it.
Well, you're
recommend.
probably going to be in trouble then. It's just a matter of time.
No, especially with your custom quilting, I would strongly consider it.
Now, Haley, we got a question here. A customer asked, do you charge for shipping the quilts back to the customers? They pay for shipping, I'm assuming.
So I do, and that's part of the reason I don't like to have a lot of like hidden or additional costs, is because I never know what it's going to cost to ship back. So they obviously have to pay for the shipping to send it to me, but then they also have to pay return shipping, which we just don't know what it's going to be. But I always tell people, I mean, even if you're sending 3 or 4 quilts, I've never had shipping over $30 for return shipping. So
very good. Now, Cheryln, you touched on this earlier in regards to how the flexibility of quilting for business was really impactful for you to be able to participate in your grandchildren's lives and their busy sports schedules and such. quilting for business as a whole, how has that impacted you? And of course, would you recommend it to everyone else that has the same dream?
I would highly recommend. If you have a desire at all to get into quilting, it is something that you should pursue for yourself. If you have the creativity, or even if you are not sure, you should do it. I love quilting at home because I do have the flexibility of when I want to be able to control my time. It is a large investment, there's no doubt that you look at that chunk of change that you have to outlay for a machine, and it's scary. But I paid myself back more than what I invested, I would say, in the first 2.5 to 3 years. So, I, of course, haven't all put it back in my investment. We've gone on trips. I've been able to provide extra things for my family, my kids, my grandkids, my husband. It is scary, and you wonder if you can do it. You wonder if people will like what you do. But you just have to find your niche and find someone who can encourage you. Talk to another quilter. Call Haley. Call me. Call people at Gamble. I never thought twice about it, and I just jumped in with feet, and I've never been sorry. And I also have been thankful that the bank turned me down for my loan.
You didn't pay one bit of interest, did you?
No, I didn't. At first it was discouraging, but I knew it was out there.
Well, we are about to run out of time. I wanted to, Haley, I didn't know if you had anything else that you wanted to add, since there's a lot of people that are thinking about, looking at, or actually actively participating in business. Is there anything that you still want to add before we end the program?
One more thing. Biggest piece of advice I can give, and I know that you can do it, but it'll suck the fun, it'll suck the joy, and honestly, it'll leave you super, super stressed, and it just wasn't worth it to me. So when I started my LLC, I hired an attorney to do it. It was like $900. I would say it was the best $900 that I ever spent in my life. And then I have a really amazing accountant. I will never do my taxes. I will never, I never want to do my taxes. I don't want to know anything about it. Just tell me what I owe people and I will pay it. So I get an accountant and find somebody to help you do an LLC. Or however you decide to start your business.
Of course. Well,
I have a sole proprietorship, so I'm not incorporated. I do have insurance on quilts that are in my home waiting to be quilted, but I do have a very good accountant as well.
Yes. That's a great tip. Insurance too. You don't think about how much you have in quilts there if something happens, your house burns down, God forbid. But I at one point had what I would consider probably $30,000 to $40,000 worth of quilts in my possession, and I don't want to have to pay $30,000 to $40,000 out of my own pocket. So insurance is key.
You bet. Well, thank you both so much for the information you've shared. One thing I just wanted to touch on one last time was last Tuesday in this webinar is whenever we introduced the Accelerate program that we've been offering for the last week and a half. It is an extensive online training course that is for anybody, no matter the machine that they own, to help you become successful and give you the road work to become a successful long arm quilter as quick as you can with the resources that we've put together in this course. If you're interested in any more information on that, you can find it at gamble.com/accelerate, or you can call us or email us anytime. We'd be happy to share that with you.
Awesome. Yes, all kinds of resources that we have there. Well, listen, I almost hate to go. We've really been enjoying talking to you girls, and thank you
Thank
so
you for
much.
having me.
Yeah.
Once again, we got Cheryln Grubbs, Ladybug Quilting, is that right?
Yes.
That's correct.
And Haley Fetters, Mistletoe Quilting Co.
Yep.
Right, okay. So yeah, feel free to look them up. And that's going to do it for this episode. And we just appreciate everyone who has joined us. And once again, I want to say thank you, Cheryl and Haley, both of you. You have I know that you've inspired a lot of people out there. And
I hope so.
so we're going to sign off for now. And if anybody has a question about anything that you've heard today, you can get a hold of us here at Gamble, either on gamble.com or give us a call. But we just thank you so much, and we look forward to talking to you next week. Bye-bye.